Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Crimson Chronicles Podcast. We have with us today Dr. Corey Gibbs, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the ticket market and the secondary ticket market. So, Tommy, why don't you give us a little intro today and help us get to know Corey before we jump into this interview?
Thank you, Rick. Today we've got a fascinating interview with Corey Gibbs with Elite Entertainment Experiences, and he's going to tell us today about the crazy world of ticketing. Having worked in the Alabama ticket office and the Tide Pride area for 19 years, plus an additional 14 years in the Crimson Tide Foundation, I thought I had seen it all in terms of the advancement and progression of an industry. But today's ticket world is on another level than what it was just a few years ago. Technology-wise, since the University of Alabama has gone from mailing out pre-printed tickets via U.S. mail to printing seat locations on the blank ticket stuff in our office and mailing out all our tickets, to sending an electronic file of all the seat locations to Weldon Williams and Lick in Fort Smith, Arkansas, and them printing and shipping all the tickets via UPS, and then finally transitioning to digital ticketing about 6 or 7 years ago. And our philosophy in the secondary ticket market, which is what we're going to talk about today, took a turn in around 2006 when the athletic department signed a deal with StubHub, and they knew that so many Alabama tickets were being sold on the secondary market. They figured, hey, why not take advantage of that and let's earn some more revenue from that? And I guess it was that you can't beat them, join them mindset. That's what they did, and it's just been a unbelievable time. I'll never forget the ticket office folks being absolutely appalled at the orange and blue StubHub brochures that were being stuffed into the Tide Pride amenities packages and the season tickets, orange and blue of all colors. Mm-hmm. And it was at that point, 2006 or so, that I had a change of heart toward the secondary ticket market. For years, we had preached against scalpers and scalping. We had run them away from the Coliseum ticket office. We had run them off the grounds of the stadiums. But now, with going with StubHub, gave the athletic department the opportunity for more control and ultimately more revenue. So just like that, the negative term scalper became the universally accepted term ticket broker. And on today's podcast, we have one of the best, Dr. Corey Gibbs, a native of Eutaw, Alabama. Corey holds undergraduate and master's degrees from the University of Alabama and a PhD from the Wharton School of Business. And Corey, I've always liked you personally, but professionally, there was a time when we didn't like you very much, but it is great to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. And you could not have literally teed it up any better. It's a changing world. Just like I will say, today's world of the secondary market, there's no such thing. And we'll talk about it, I'm sure, but there's no such thing as a secondary market anymore. It's just it's a ticket ecosystem where the primary and the secondary get along, and we feed off of each other's energies and opportunities, and we make each other more money, and everyone gets to have their children and their grandkids better Christmas presents. So yeah, that's symbiotic. But no, you're right, Tommy. There has been a significantly dynamic change over the last, not just 20 years or 18 years when StubHub became what they were, even the last 4 or 5. And we'll talk a little bit about that if you guys want to as well. But
yeah, I wanted to ask you, what's your background? How does a boy from Eutaw, Alabama become one of the nation's top ticket brokers? How in the world did you get in this business? 30 years ago?
August 12th of 95 was day one. So we're 29 years and a few months in. So the elevator speak of it, I would say, is I always grew up being a little bit of a go-getter / hustler. My parents owned a little country store. I pumped gas and took out groceries, cleaned up parking lots from the time I was 9 or 10. And while I was doing that, Friday and Saturday, when everyone in the little small country town of Eutaw and Clinton, Alabama, get off work and get their paycheck, they would have a few beverages in tin cans. So I started collecting all their aluminum cans and putting them in bags. And my grandfather would take me to the aluminum can depository, and I'd get 5 cents a pound. And I was like, okay, I can hustle a little bit here to make a little bit of extra cash on top of the $40 my dad paid me to work basically 40 hours a week pumping gas and sweeping floors. So we went from that through high school got to college and came to college. And during orientation in July, one of my favorite stories I ever tell, because this is where it all started. And all of us in the secondary industry and every broker in the world has the same story. It's just different location, a different widget, and a different person. Anyone that's been in it more than 20 years has the same story, and it's comical. So mine came to orientation with the golf team and met a very nice, sweet young lady from Pass Christian, Mississippi, who happened to be on the gymnastics team. And we started spending Crystal's dates together and eating in the cafeteria. Hey, you seem pretty resourceful. My mom and dad want to come to the first home football game. You think you could get them 2 tickets and a hotel room and a reservation at a restaurant? And I'm like, well, let's see. They don't take reservations, and I can find some tickets. It's like a crap game, and hotels have been sold out for 2 years. This is 1995. We're still not very good, but okay. So I eat tickets from an undisclosed source. I go to Bob Baumhauer's and I said, hey, can you help me find a hotel room for 2 people? He's like, go next door, see Charlie at Hampton Inn, tell him whatever. I got him a disabled room that probably had a leaking faucet, which was fine. They had a room. And then I'm like, I cannot find them a reservation. No one takes reservations. So I went to Drew Henson at the Cypress Inn, and I said, Drew, need a reservation. And he goes, we don't do those, but go see the bartender. Went and gave the bartender $20 and turned into the reservation on Friday night. And there was a handwritten on a Sharpie piece of paper, reserved. And I'm like, okay, I see how this works. But the next week, she had 2 gymnast teammates and a soccer player. Hey, my aunt's uncle's brother's sister's dog's child is coming to the game. Can you get them 2 tickets? And I'm like, sure. So then I decided to add $10 a person just to make like Taco Bell money. And I did that. And then the truth of the matter, the real story started when I was looking for stuff for those people. I walked into Gordon Palmer Hall. I put it on Instagram this year. I put a picture of it and said where it all started. With a picture of Gordon Palmer at 6:30 in the morning on a run. And I did it on August 12th, and it's where it all started. I walked in one day, and you would walk in, 101, you turn right, you go down the steps, and there's this gigantic cork board. And pieces of paper with little tear tags people would go. And it would say, need 2 tickets to Saturday's game. And then other people would have 4 tickets to Saturday's game. And I looked up, and I'm like, this doesn't work. I was like, this isn't working. So there was 23 total pieces of paper on the cork board. I pulled every one of them down. As soon as class was over, I went back to E3 at Highlands on Hackberry. Me and Sean Alexander and Shamara Buchanan lived there because one golf / whatever person with football people when they shut down Bryant Hall. And I spread them out. I put 11 people on this side, 12 people on that side. I matched them up. I had no money. So I would take my driver's license. I'd call these people and ask them what they would pay. I'd ask these people what they would take. I'd take a little bit off. I'd go give this person my driver's license because I didn't have any money to pay them. I'll bring it back, promise. I'd go across town. I'd sell them the tickets. Then I would come back with the money, pay for their tickets, get my driver's license, and start. And long story short, that's how it started until it got a little bit bigger. And then I was like, had a little money to buy stuff. And I was like, I can just buy it and sell it now. I'm not wasting the gas back and forth. That's an overhead already to do. So that was 95, 96. There it went to 97, 8, junior, senior in college. All my friends were graduating, taking jobs in Charlotte, North Carolina with Bank of America and moving here and moving there. And I'm like, y'all are moving up there for how much money? They're like, oh, this. I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'll just sit here and sell tickets because this is a lot better than what you're doing. and IRS and most of it was cash. All of it. Let's just be honest. But so it went from there to merge. I was doing a lot and found a guy that wanted to have a little more of what I would call a guarantee. And my business at that point was I had built up a relationship business, which I always built my business on, mainly retail, people that I know, trust, like, relationships. And he introduced me to the national ticket market, and he did Super Bowl, Masters, and Derby, and I did college football. And it was easy for me, and it was easy for him. So we merged, and a few years later, we did very well. Had some crazy stories we can talk about later. A few of them were insane, almost unbelievable, but did that until 2010. And I was driving to Ole Miss, Alabama in Oxford, and got the phone call that he had a massive heart attack and passed away. So then I took over everything, and then just from there went back on my own and been doing it ever since. So it turned into get 2 tickets in a hotel and a handwritten reservation for a pseudo kind of girlfriend, which I thought I was 18 years old. I didn't know what a girlfriend meant. Turned into a big kid job. So that's where we're at today.
Corey, you have a really disarming way of telling a pretty complex story, and we're a long way from court boards in one of the buildings in Alabama today. But I think one of the things maybe that you can help folks understand a little bit is really understanding a little bit more about the ticket business and really understanding kind of the two sides of the service. There's the retail side on one side that most fans are familiar with, but then there's this whole other corporate side, which is really what you've really pioneered in E3.
Yeah, I built, and both of them, I will say, are built on the same belief system as one is all. So I built, before I even knew the term or knew what it meant, the term is called customer centricity, and it's taking care of people the right way. It's taking care of the right client the right way. And that's what relationships are built on in life. I don't care if you're selling trucks, trains, planes, apples, or oranges or tickets. That's just what you're supposed to do. And that's how I was brought up in small town Utah, Alabama. Because if you didn't do things the right way, then there was a different answer. But the retail side is Joe and Sue and Bob and the kids calling once or twice a year. And they want to go to this game or this concert or this event. And they are what this industry has been built off of for years. And it's great because that's where I cut my teeth doing it as well. And they're still to that. And I still do a ton of that. About the time that Tommy was alluding to earlier, around 2005-06, when StubHub became StubHub, 2002, that's another entire story. We could do a whole podcast on that. But 2 Stanford kids doing their MBA designed this company. And long story short, if you're at Stanford and you do an MBA project as your final culminating project, Stanford owns the intellectual rights to it. So Jeff Fleur and Sakalakis decided not to turn their project in because they said, this is good enough to do. So they punted on getting their MBA to start the company. It failed 3 times. Liquid Seats, there was 3 different names. And then they came up with the reason that made it work. When it worked was in 2003, 4-ish. I still remember my very first StubHub sale, which is also retail, 99% retail. But the fan protect guarantee is what drove that to let people say, I'm protected. I don't have Joe on the corner who's selling fake Rolexes under one arm and tickets under the other arm, and I'm banking it to make sure I get in the game. Let's flip the coin. Okay, that's where that was. And it still continued later on. But when StubHub became StubHub, they pseudo-legitimized the retail side. And I say pseudo for one reason, because still people were, even though they were a company, they still weren't a public company.
Right.
And then in 2006, those 2 young men who I love to death, and I've done a lot with them in the past and good friends with them, got a phone call from eBay. And they said, hey, you're a thorn in our side. We don't like you because you're cramping our eBay ticket side right now. How about we buy you? Nah, we're not for sale. They're making money hand over fist. And they said, no, seriously, come up with a number. And one of the guys' birthdays is March 13th. This is a true story. March 13th. He goes, okay, cool. $313 million. We came up with a number. And they said, we'll get back to you. 3 days later, they had a purchase agreement for $313 million.
Wow.
Verifiable, look it up, public knowledge. The funny thing is StubHub bought it so fast that they didn't put anything in it for outside of the U.S. So a month later, they opened up StubHub EU from Europe.
Man.
And then StubHub went back and said, all right, guys, this isn't funny. We'll give you another $50 million and you're never getting in the ticket business again. They're like, okay, we'll take that. Thanks. So that's when they got sold to eBay, which that put a secondary ticket company marketplace as a publicly traded company. That is a milestone event in our industry. When you have a secondary market that is a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, who's going to argue with that? That's when they started what I call putting trophies on the wall. They go to Notre Dame, they go to Tennessee, they go to Alabama, and they get all these people to be their partners and pay sponsorship fees. That is a win. Those universities, schools, pro teams, MLB got significant data from it to help them shop their goods. And they also made a ton of money, but it legitimized what it did, 100%. So that's how the retail side got legitimized. But the retail side, long story short, to backtrack, and I wanted to lay that out there, even though it took a few minutes just so people understood how it got legitimized. But the retail side is a guy, his wife, his kids, his partner, his friends, going to a game, going to a concert. That's one side. The corporate side is a completely different animal. That is when Goldman Sachs, FedEx, corporations, PricewaterhouseCoopers, whoever, you name a company, they want to entertain, to put their butts in the seats. They're sending someone for the betterment of their organization. And so that's where but the problem was when the online exchanges hit, the StubHubs, the Vivids, the SeatGeeks, the whatever, all great colleagues and friends of mine, when that hit, the easy button came on. So when I say the easy button, you had the managing director of a Fortune 500 company says, hey, I've got Joe and his crew coming in for the Giants-Jets game. We need to get them 8 tickets. Their assistant would go online, type in Giants-Jets, the first 3 things that pulled up on the SEO, they would click it, they would buy it, they would get them tickets, and everything's fine and dandy if it goes great. But when one problem goes wrong and they don't have someone to call to handle personal customer service, it turns into a different animal, which is when my world of looking at corporate versus retail changed. And that's when I decided to go back and do something a little different. And 15 was when I made the decision to do that, which is when I went back and did the first school age stuff.
Corey, Alabama football would obviously be on the retail side of your business. Can you elaborate on Alabama fans' passion for the game and your experience with Alabama fans through the years?
That is a understatement on the word go. There are schools that have the passion that our fan base, and I say our fan base because it's me. And I went to 112. I went to 110 games in 12 years, home and away. So I think I can characterize myself as an Alabama fan. I would say, and some of those weren't very good because from 96 to 99, there were days where I didn't want to remember. However, the passion for this fan base it's in that top 2, 3. You've got, and it's changed. It's significantly changed, but the passion overall is rooted. There's very few schools that you see fans go to the lengths that our fans do to be able to attend. And the demographic of an Alabama fan, yes, there are significantly wealthy fans in Atlanta and Chicago and New York that take private planes down, and even in Alabama, in Mountain Brook and in Fairhope and Point Clear, that it doesn't matter. But there's a lot of Alabama fans in Podunk, Alabama, and I'm not going to name exact cities because I don't want to call them out, but there's fans in those cities. There's fans in Utah, Alabama, and Clinton, Alabama that want to go to Alabama game that don't make six figures. Hell, they barely get five figures. But I'll tell you what they'll do. They'll pack a lunch 30 days a week, a month of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches so they don't have to go $3.99 combos at Jack's, and 4 times 30 is 120, and they can now buy an upper level ticket to go watch Alabama play Missouri or Kentucky, and they go to Alabama game. And when you do that, there's very few schools in this country that'll do that. If those people are, that's where our industry, not our industry, that's where collegiate athletics has gone, which I feel bad for those fans because a lot of those fans are priced out of it. Those fans, those exact type fans, the ones that have season tickets in U4RR, and the ones, a lot of them that have tickets in lower level end zones, they'll never see Alabama play in a national championship game because they're priced out of it. Right. But those people right there, people will, if you get into a fight, you want them in your freaking foxhole because now I guarantee you. And that's how it's our fan bases. Rabid is a great word. I think that question, Tommy, leads into the change in our fan base and the emotion over the years. And if that's something okay to talk about, I'd like to hear a little bit of that. Because everyone thinks that the more you win championships and everything else, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. That's true to a certain extent. But once you win so much, the law of diminishing return kicks in and people are like, damn, I've spent so much money on tickets in the last years. And I'm not talking about the fans I was just talking about. I'm talking about every fan. Mm-hmm. There comes a complacency. Winning at the highest level, you got to think from 2008 until today, and this is me talking off the cuff. I'm not looking at notes. Right. I think we've lost 6 games in Bryant-Denny since 08. I think that's right. Since 08. Okay. I watched us lose 6 games in person my senior year in college, including like Central Florida, Northern Illinois, La Tech. Let's just continue. Complacency when you go to a game and you see your team land 55-10, you go beat A&M 59-0 in 2014 or 13 after Johnny Manziel beat us 2 years before, and it was the revenge game. All right. At some point, people go, no, I spent this to go watch the backups play the second half. Oh, yeah. And then you win 6 national championships out of X number of years. And they're like, well, I can't go to the Alabama Ole Miss game or the Arkansas game because I got to save my money for the semi-final, then the national championship game. People laugh about that, not in this bubble, but that's real, like 100% real. And it got to that point, 08, 09, 10, 11, people mortgaged their houses and offered more things in the world, which we'll talk about later, in comical stories that you would never believe to go to a game. But after we beat Notre Dame, like they stole something, people are like, this is getting old. We're not going to semis. And then 14 kind of jerked some people in line because everyone had already booked their flights. This is one of the stories that I like a lot, that after 08 put Alabama fans a little bit in check. And I see it with other schools too. Kansas was this way in basketball, but in 14, we look like world beaters, can't lose, no shot. Number 1, go to New Orleans, our town, to play Ohio State. And every one of my clients that I talk to every day, friends, colleagues, corporate, retail, it's New Year's, we're going to do something different. And we're just going to save our money for LA because we really want to do LA right. So we're going to go ahead and book LA. We're going to plan this. We're here, have dinner there. And we'd go down there. Wardell Jones and Ezekiel Knight had a little bit of a different idea. And how'd that work out? And the next year, they're like, okay. In 15, they traveled to Dallas to watch us beat Michigan State like a drum. And they traveled to Arizona. And the next year, they traveled to Tampa. And so 3 years later, they didn't go to the semifinals because they're like, we're going to play Georgia and Atlanta. And they were right, and turned into one of the biggest tickets in college football history, but maybe until this year, we'll see. Well,
Corey, I'm curious. Do you have a read on this year as far as with Coach DeBoer, the new staff, and a new environment? Is that providing any sort of a little bump in folks having a little more curiosity and wanting to lean in?
so I would say this. Initially, there was the mourning stage, and I say that, and I think that's normal. Coach Saban's gone. It's the end of the world. We're done. Everyone's like praying that things are going to be okay. And you could have literally hired anyone, and a lot of Alabama fans would have not been okay with it.
Right.
And that was just the way it was. And that period of time, you saw, okay, we had transfer portal. We had kids leaving left and right. You had bandwagon jumpers leaving left and right. Oh, I'm not renewing my tickets. I'm not doing that. I want to watch this crap again. I've seen this rebuilding thing don't work. I'm like, the rebuilding thing in 2007 and 8 worked okay when we got Nick Saban. Who says we're not going to hire another Nick Saban? There's no such thing there. Whatever. So the first little bit of time, there was a little bit of a down. Early on, the demand from our fan base was down. I would say somewhere between 15 and 20% overall, just not, we're not going to do it this year. We're going to see how it goes. Mm-hmm. And then Kalen gets here, who I will say is an absolutely incredible human being. Had an opportunity to spend a good bit of time with him and talk to him a lot of times. Might be the nicest human being I ever met. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen in the SEC. But once he got here and people started to see how the kids were buying in and kids are coming back and Proctor's coming back and you're getting the buy-in, and he can't recruit here because he's not from here. And he starts getting every 5-star in this. People are like, well, he's got to be doing something right. Yeah, he took Washington to the national championship game and beat a team in a neutral site that beat us by double digits at home. Let's give him a little bit of credit. Mm-hmm. Let's just call it spade. I would say that it turned a little bit there and people started to buy in. And then when they started listening, and this is not football, but I'm going to say this because I've said it 100 times and I believe it. The best thing that ever happened to the transition into Coach DeBoer at the time he came on was the Alabama basketball team going on a Final Four run and Nate Oates taking the center stage, because it allowed Kalen and his staff to work under the radar, do their job, build a program without anyone going, what happened on the third day of spring practice? Who cares? We're in Sweet 16 and we just won. That's where that came from. But then when game 1 hit, it was probably the best demand. We played Western Kentucky. Right. Everyone knew we were going to win 50. But that stadium, if you look at the last 10 years, even after national championship years, that stadium was pretty dadgum good for an opener in August, 108 degrees with 200%. Yeah. He had turned around. And winning solves a lot. And that's what he realized, I think. And he got a great staff and they're recruiting well. And people are buying it. People are slowly like, okay, this is going to be okay. Hey, it will be.
It feels like demand's just about as good as it has been. And so that's a good thing. But let me ask you, listening to you talk about the analytical side, even of thinking about the new coaching staff and why they got such a good chance to be able to function under the radar, you're a thoughtful guy. And you're an exception. There aren't a lot of guys from Utah, Alabama that have a PhD from the Wharton School of Business. So that already almost probably makes you a unicorn, if not a Yeti. But then on top of that, you are certainly the only product of Utah, Alabama that's had a feature article in Forbes magazine about you. So, man, how did that come about?
Yeah, you were correct on both of those. So when I went back, so like I said a little bit earlier, when our industry had changed, the short version of it is going through 2011, 12, 13, our industry significantly changed from relational to transactional. And having had done it for 20 years, just being relational. Like I just wanted to deal with people. I wanted someone to call me. I didn't want to place an order online. I wanted to call me, tell them what they wanted, how they wanted it, why they wanted it. They gave me their problem and I solved it. That was my good feeling of doing that. And it changed with the online aspect that people just started buying stuff. And I'm like, this won't work long term. It just won't. And I said, there's not enough legs on it. People are getting annoyed. Our client, especially a retail client, is going to have a very big problem with that when their client has a bad experience and they lose business. So I said, there's got to be something different. So I said, I'm going to go create a different widget. So I said, how do I do that? So I had the opportunity to go back and get my PhD at the Wharton School of Business at Penn. And they opened a brand new program in entrepreneurship. And I was lucky enough to get in. And I flew up there on Sunday night, and I went to school on Monday and Tuesday, and I flew back on Wednesday because I told them I was not moving to Philadelphia. And I got to be really good friends with all the people at the Sheraton at Joan Chestnut on 34th. And I did the program. The main idea was to build a business model that allowed things to become more back transactional, but also you had to design new learning. So I designed this algorithmic suite that tells you when to buy, when to sell, whatever, which was appealing to the corporate world. Because if I could save them a ton of money, then of course they would. But then they got the relational aspect of if they're sending Rick to a game and I knew that you had an ACL injury 3 years ago and your right knee is bad and you really could use an aisle seat that's seat 1 because it goes left to right so you could stretch your leg out on the right aisle. That's something that a customer service person in Zimbabwe and the Philippines with one of these online exchanges have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
And there's value in that, significant value, and corporate America sees it. So I went back and I designed that. I did it 2.5 years of actual school and wrote dissertation. And when I did that, the gentleman with Forbes, Eric Fuller, who covers all their entertainment and hospitality for Forbes, called me one day and said, this is fascinating. This has never been done. And the clients that you're going to, this is before I signed my first client. He said, the clients that you're going to sign up for this are going to transcend the industry. And I want to do an article on it before it even starts. And I'm like, wow, you want to do an article on what? He goes, on you in the program. And I said, oh, where will it be? He goes, Forbes magazine. And I'm like, hold on a second. Give me 1 second to think about this. So to say that, yeah, a kid from Utah would be in Forbes magazine was not on my bingo card at all. And, but it was cool. I have to admit it was cool. And I do have a picture of it, of the article on my wall framed. I have to admit.
As well, you should, man, that no doubt.
And that side of the industry it's not my main focus because I still love to deal with the Joes and Bobs and Sues. But it's also been a nice way to give back to the corporate world. And a lot of those corporate clients, I'll be honest with you, 7 of my 13 corporate clients have Alabama or Southeastern ties. One with Goldman Sachs, one with SEC Capital, one with, a lumber company, one with a very high-end corporate real estate, because even before that, they knew me, liked me, and trusted me. And then when I could offer their corporation, who's a Fortune 500 company, a way to save 130% a year, they're like, yeah, sign us up. So it's been great. It's a great way to do it. I still love the retail though, because the retail is where the crazy stuff happens.
Corey, I had a question. I'm a ticket guy at heart from a long time ago, but tell us how the transition from hard tickets to digital tickets has changed your industry, especially with Alabama fans.
There's pros and cons, as I'm sure you probably realized during your time too. It goes from back when you would get the hard stop tickets and on the back you flip it over and it's all the stuff you can and can't do. It's Weldon Williams and Lick with the copyright, and they all went to Arkansas and Fort Smith, and they sent them in, and everyone waited until they showed up at UPS.
Yeah.
And then you go, the rat race starts. The pros of that were, and still the pros to this day, are people could have a ticket in their hand that as soon as the game was over, they would go take that thumbtack and they'd put it on their little merchandise wall or their keepsake. And that was what brought them memories back. There's a lot of value in that and a lot of memories. That was the pro significantly, mainly the big pro. The cons of the hard tickets became over time as people got smarter. Obviously counterfeits, duplicates, the whole 9 yards, which caused people at the gate to people that were not full-time employees at any university that were working there for $6.85 an hour. And they're like, why do I have to put up with this guy whose thing won't scan because it's a fake ticket? Or they actually let them in and you have 3 people show up in the same seat. And then you got trying to,
I've been through that before, believe me.
oh, I know. Me too. And then it's figuring out who the hell has the real one. And sometimes it's just what yours looks most real. How about you just go down and stand on the runway up against it? We'll call it a day.
No, we banned them to the student section.
Well, right. So that's the pros and the cons. And then it goes from there. It transcends to the PDFs, which they thought was a lot better because they were mailing out electronic PDFs that people printed off. What they didn't realize is that was as easy or easier to duplicate and counterfeit as the hard tickets. Because at least the hard tickets, you had a little bit of like a hologram and some foil on it to make it look cute. If it's PDFs, if a true counterfeiter wants to do it, they just go to Kinko's and pay 49 cents a copy and print off 100 of the same damn one in color, and they go pass them out, and whoever shows up, and they buy one real ticket, and they print, and they go sell them under market on the street out of a trapper keeper, and whoever shows up first gets it. The other 49 are screwed. Probably didn't expect to have trapper keeper on this podcast, but you know what? That's where we're at. So that's that, and they realized that quickly because PDFs could easily email to more people. Then the mainstream ticket world went to mobile ticketing quite a while before college athletics did, especially SEC. But then you remember the first mobile Alabama event was the Alabama Florida State game in Atlanta. And we're like, what does this mean? I have it on my phone, and I'm going to tell you, that is the most customer service I've ever done in my life from August the 3rd until August the 31st. People would walk in with their laptops and say, my ticket won't hear it. And I'm like, you did not have to bring your computer to me. You don't like computer. Oh no, it'll be me on my email. It's here. I'm like, all right, that's where we're at. And it was a lot of long days, but then the pros of the cons, people miss the old tickets, and especially Southern deep based and tradition fan base. It's not just Southern, Ohio State, Notre Dame, they want their damn ticket because they want to be able to hold on to it when they beat Michigan the 3rd time in a row and their kid was there with them and they got a picture with it. But the mobile ticketing the pros are so outweigh the cons. The cons is you don't get their hard ticket. The pro is it in essence reduces fraud to zero, especially if it's a revolving barcode where it regenerates every time you transfer it. There's zero way to have fraud there. That's main. The thing that most people don't think about is transferability ease. You're mobile and you wake up and you have a sick kid who wakes up in the middle of the night and you've got 4 tickets in section F row 30 and you were driving up that morning for a 6 o'clock game and you're not going to make it. In 2007, 2010, you threw them in the garbage can and ate them. Now you make one phone call or an email or a friend or put them online and you can get something out of them. Are you going to get a huge premium? Probably not, but it's better than everything. So the transferability has been fantastic. Those two outweigh the cons significant for sure.
Yeah. In all your days dealing with Alabama football tickets, what's the most demanded Alabama home game during your career? Maybe a road game or a bowl game?
Home game, I would say Alabama LSU 2011. Quote, game of the century deal. If you look at that in today, and this is 2011, so we're 13 years in, 2:30 kickoff or 6 o'clock kickoff. ESPN, may have been 7 o'clock kickoff, actually. It was a night game, whatever it was.
Yeah.
It was a night game. That game never stopped. And most of them do. And you got to think, that was when we were at 81,818, which capacity usually drives demand. We all remember back the years ago, 82. It was from 82 to 91,118 to 101,818 to all those. As we grew as a stadium, you would think that would diminish a little bit. That game did not. That game never died. At 2:30, 3 o'clock on the day of the game, November the 5th, 2011, I could walk outside with a hard ticket in section SS8, row 35, last row in the stadium, seat 12 in the middle of the row, and sell it for $375 to $400 as fast as I could put it in the air. People fighting over it.
Wow.
You got to think, a $400 ticket 13 years ago today, that's the time value of money. It's pretty that strong. So that as a home game has been the biggest, I would say the biggest demand.
Hey, Corey, I will say I walked into the Ivory Club that day and saw LeBron James sitting in the Ivory Club. I knew it had to be a pretty important game for that to happen.
Yeah, there's been a few of those games. The LeBron game, the game that you turn around and Derek Jeter's looking at you over there. There's been a few, but that game right there was so built up among the media, among the world and everything. That was the biggest home demand ever, I would say. I will say the A&M game a couple of years ago was pretty dadgum strong too, but it's changed a little bit now. But that was a pretty strong. They came in here after they beat us in College Station, and he became the first assistant to ever beat Nick. And then the return game, because there was a little bit of a revenge factor. Road game wise, true road game, and I say that true road game. The Florida State game in Atlanta when we were 1-2 that year, the first game in Mercedes, that drew a lot of corporate because they wanted to be there the first time Mercedes opened. I don't count that as a road game demand. That's almost more like a bowl game demand. True road game demand, if you quantify it back, it's not even a question. It's the 1993 Alabama-Auburn game when probation and the only way to watch it was being in the stadium.
Yeah.
That demand was pretty dumb.
Yeah.
The way that I went to that game is one of my funniest stories, and I'll tell that in a minute. We won't even, that'll be one of the funny stories, but I would say a true road game, the LSU game in 2012, after we got beat here, down there, the Yeldon game, the Yeldon screen pass game, that was a freaking strong ticket because the revenge factor, the other way that we're going down there. And that was a strong, I would say that. Bowl game wise, there's not even a question. National championship, Alabama, Georgia. Alabama, Clemson in Tampa was a close second, but Alabama, Georgia there, you got two fan bases, both can, and that's one thing that drives demand is, and I won't get too deep into that because it gets into the math of it, but you had two fan bases that could drive to the game the day of the game. It was an afternoon game at 4:00. You could leave Birmingham, drive over if you wanted to, go to the game and drive home, be home before midnight. You didn't have to spend money on hotels, food, flights, and all of Georgia over there. And every time you take one of those pods away, because people will spend X amount of money to go to an event, and they take out the housing, the travel, and the food, and whatever's left, that's where the ticket market sets. It's just math. I tell people, I don't make the rules; those are just rules. When that happens, when you can drive and eat, or heck, you can eat breakfast at your house and lunch and Mercedes, you can get a $2 refillable Coke for the whole game. It's not hard. You can eat cheap there. The Mastersmith Tower. So that's hands down. I don't know if there'll ever be an Alabama event that will be that. It was $2,500 to walk in the door with 10 minutes before kickoff.
Wow.
But it's sleeting and Trump was coming in. But at that point, people are just like, my phone's dying. What do I do? But
man, Corey, as much as I really want to tap into my inner nerd and ask you, I want to talk algorithms and I want to get deep into the stats. But probably I'm thinking about the folks that are listening to this podcast and they're thinking, I want to hear the wildest stories that Corey knows. I want to hear the craziest stuff that's happened. What would be one of those great stories that you still can't believe it to this day?
Oh, there's a bunch of them. I'll give you a few things that happened like that are what I call needle in the haystack stories. Then there's stories that are like, those are the kind of, how did this happen? And then there's the ones that you're like, these fans are crazy. And there's the crazy fan.
Let's go with that. Let's do that.
I'll go with that. I'm going to go with
that.
it. So I'm going to go with that one first. I can think of 3 good ones. 2011, Alabama LSU, Wednesday afternoon, I'm sitting in my office on University Boulevard. Door opens, I hear the ding. And you got to understand, at that point, this is a $400 ticket. We'll walk through the door.
Right.
You high-five God on the way up to your seat, literally. And this guy walks in, and he is dead serious. He said, I would like some really good seats for this game. And I said, okay. And I said, I've got this and this and this and this. And I had some seats from a lady. She passed away a few years ago, but I had some extra seats from her. Family couldn't make it. And they were 35, 40-yard line, east side on the aisle in section FF. And he said, okay, that sounds good. How much are they? And I said, they would be about $16.50 a ticket. And he goes, okay. And I'm like, that was easy. He goes, I've got a proposition for you. And I said, not sure where this is going, but okay. Would you take a car on trade? And I said, I'm sorry, excuse me? He said, oh, I've got a 98 Honda Civic out there that's got about 142,000 miles on it. They'll run forever. At this point, he's selling me as a car. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. And he goes, would you trade me that car for those 2 tickets? And I went, and the knee jerk is car for 2 tickets. This has to be a reasonable idea. And I was like, when I'm sitting there on the computer, I looked it up and was like, Kelly Blue Book, like 20, 30. And I said, no. And he goes, you mean you won't trade me a good running car for 2 football tickets that's going to be gone on Saturday? I said, sir, your car's not worth what the tickets are worth. He goes, I can't believe that. And I'm like, I can't really believe I'm turning down a car for 2 tickets either, but here we are. And so that was probably one of the 2 most insane offers for tickets I've ever gotten. The other one, we're not probably even going to go there. But then also involved an Alabama LSU game in Baton Rouge. So we'll just leave it there. And that one also got turned down. We kept the inventory in-house on that one too. That one was like, holy cow, where'd that come from? That's the only time I've ever been offered a car for another one of this is probably my favorite story in 29 years. And it's just one of those right place, right time, crazy, but as Tommy mentioned earlier, I'm a Super Bowl, Masters, Derby, Grammys, Emmys, Final Four, Broadway. When myself and my former partner passed away, we were in Phoenix for the Super Bowl with Tom Brady and Giants game when Brady was going for undefeated 2009, whatever it was. And we had an office set up there. We got a small package deal with the Giants, paid them a ton of money. How StubHub pays schools. We paid them a ton of money for quite a few seats. And so we're there. And we set up an office at 40 North 2nd Street in Phoenix. And I had about 9 people there working for me. And I was running the quote brain of the operation, inventory management and all the financials and stuff back in the bag. But as a retail person, just like I do today still, I love grassroots marketing. So we had the little kick down sign out front, the little triangle sign. It was like Super Bowl tickets, call, and I had my cell number. I get a phone call. And it's this deep European accent guy. And I'm looking for Super Bowl tickets. And I went, oh, okay. My name is Elver Danzanzevich, still one of my great friends to this day. I said, how did you get my number? Because I'm just thinking, I have no idea where this is going. And I'm a little worried. He goes, your name's on the sign out front. And I said, yes, that. I forgot about that. Cool. He goes, I'm looking for 1 ticket. Oh, okay. He goes, we need tickets in club level section 210. We have 8 there on row 1. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like looking, click. Randomly, I have section 210, row 1, seat number 9. He had seats 1 through 8. There are only 9 seats on the row. And the reason I had that is because those are from the Giants allocation, and they basically shoved a single down my throat as part of our package because they didn't think they could sell it. Fast forward to 30 seconds later, and he goes, "Do you have something?" And I said, "Yes, I have one there." And he goes, "How much?" And I told him some exorbitant number. And because it was a huge ticket. Oh, I'll tell you right now, it's $15,500. I said, 15. And he goes,
Oh my gosh.
and he goes, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "You have that ticket?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "I'll be there in 2 seconds." And never forget as long as I live. It's like something out of a movie. The double doors in this ballroom that we're in opens, like Batman's coming in. And here comes this 6'6", 265-pound strapping individual in a long black trench coat. And my first thought was, I'm about to die. This is how it's going to end right now. He walks up and he goes, "Corey?" And I said, "Yep." And he goes, "You have the ticket?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Can I see it?" And I said, "Absolutely." At this point, I'm like, "Dude, you can have whatever you want." I was at the corner, and I showed it to him, and he goes, "Okay, we want it. I'm going to get my boss." And I went, "Oh, now he's going to bring another guy in a trench coat. I'm definitely dead at this point. I'm done." Like, this is New York Mafia. They're in the vending machine and the whatever business, waste management. I'm done. 3 seconds later, he walks back in with this guy who's 5'6", 150 pounds soaking wet, waddling up to the thing. And I'm like, I know what it is. He walks up and he goes, "Elver says you have a ticket next to us." And I said, "Okay." He goes, "My name is Daniel Ballou. I own Danielle in New York. DeBoer Ballou, like #1 restaurateur. He and Thomas Keller were best friends in the world." He said, "We made a mistake." I said, "Why do you need this ticket?" He said, "We made a mistake. I requested some from the Giants, and they gave me 8 tickets because I requested 8. And when I was counting, I forgot to count myself. We needed 9. And I said, "Lucky for you, I have the one next to you." So I got them the single ticket in a 85,000 seat stadium next to them. And he looked at me and he goes, "Have you ever been to my restaurants?" And I said, "Nope." He goes, "Anytime you ever want to come," he said, "Elver, give him your phone number." He said, "If you ever want to come, or any of your friends or clients want to come," he said, "come to Danielle at 40 East 65th Street. He said, "We just won Michelin 3-star of the year. We finally beat out Thomas Keller for the #1 restaurant in the country.
Wow.
You have a standing reservation any day you want it." He said, "Elver, if he calls you at 4:45 on Friday and wants to come that night, he has a table."
Wow.
And we have been friends ever since. It is the craziest, like, needle in a hay. People make that joke and say, "Dude, no one can do that. Yeah, that's the dumbest thing ever." I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but it happened." So that's the fun kind of story that happened. It also allowed me to get on which helped me long-term career, helped me get on the New York Super Bowl host committee for the 2014 New York, New Jersey, because he was the head of it with Al Kelly, the Amex, and he actually got me on it to help him set the Super Bowl. Another whole story. So those are fun ones. I would say the ones that aren't fun but are funny, looking back on it, are that's not the right way. Let me say it this way. There are bad stories in our industry that reveal the integrity and the ethics of the people in the industry, because there are a lot of them that have neither one of those. When an event goes bad, and when I say goes bad, something happens that causes the market to go through the roof or drop, and people don't do the right thing. The Auburn-Oregon game is one. The Patriots-Seahawks game, where you had an over demand for supply because someone made a bad decision and took orders on something and decided it would cost them too much to fill them. Those are the times where you work 21 hours a day for 7 days a week, trying to find a way to trying to find something to stuff in the envelopes to hand to your clients. And those two events really, I would say, defined the integrity of our industry when it became corporate, because you had people losing $3, $4, $5 million. And a lot of people are just like, "I'm not doing that. I'll never forget as long as I live." And this is the one story on the bad side that is bad on the surface, but it turned out to probably I'm not going to say define my career, but also helped me define my career. Was in Phoenix, sold a group of 6 tickets guaranteed. Because Super Bowl, you sell stuff way early because it's all corporate, and no one gets them until Wednesday before the game. So you have to sell them in zones, lower end zone, lower corner, goal to 10, 10 to 20, and you guarantee them at a certain price. So we guaranteed a company 6 tickets, upper level together, goal line or better. And we sold them at $2,800 a piece. Okay. And for a Super Bowl now, that's cheap. But back then it was the normal price. So they paid us like $18,000 for 6 tickets. And then the market went crazy because a company took a bad order and busted out of it and said, we're not filling it. Dumps all those buyers back on the market. Supply was down. And I'll never forget buying those tickets, taking them to the customer, who's still a customer today. Talked to him an hour and a half ago when I was driving back from Nashville, handing him an envelope with 6 tickets on 15-yard line. And he looked at me and said, I just lost 3 bets with people because I told them there's no chance you were delivering these tickets. And that order that they paid $16,800 for cost us $78,000 to put tickets in that envelope. He said, I'm pretty sure that you lost a lot of money on this. I said, you have no idea, Dave. And the fact that this happened, though, he goes, we'll never do business with anyone else in the world. At the moment, it looked like it was the end of life and like business is over, but it was an investment in the future. And that's the way I looked at it. You have a choice there. You can either do the right thing or the wrong thing. If you do the wrong thing, you're out of business and I got to do something else. If you do the right thing, does it hurt and stink for a little bit? But then you just think back at those times when you get offered a car and you turn it down, or every other thing in the world. But business, I will say this, going real quick on just thinking real quick, because I looked up at a picture of Alabama in my room here. The demand of Alabama and the interest in Alabama is never going to. We're Alabama as a retail, and the stories from Alabama fans are the ones that I could sit and talk about. I said one day I'm going to write a book. Tell me, I think you and I are going to collaborate on one. I was like, sure. I said a long time ago, I said, I want to do a book called Chasing Cardboard, because that's what it's no longer cardboard now, it's chasing. I like it. Whatever, but I like Chasing Cardboard because that's what it was for years. But there's so many passionate fans in this world, and it's mainly college. Collegiate athletics is the passion of the world. Masters and Derby is that same way, but you put a college fan in a room together, you don't see very many people painting their face for chemistry experiments. You put them in college football, they're going to go wild.
Well, Corey, I guess you saw a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Bell announced that the university was over 40,000 students now.
40?
And those are going to be alumni very quickly, and it will just enhance our customer base.
And it's so funny you say that. And I'm not going to get into the analytics Rick and I want to dive into one day, which we will, or breakfast or lunch. There you go. That's what people ask me, what drives demand. And there's not that many factors that do, but what you just said is significant, because you look at why Ohio State and Texas and those type programs have significant demand even when they're down. It's because they've got 60 and 70,000 students. When you divide that by 4 and you got 17,000 students graduating a year, when I school here, we had 17,000 students in the whole damn school. The more people that you're churning out, the more opportunities as though people are successful, and the more people that are successful make more money, and the more money infuses the economy. So yeah, I think it was 40,686 or 866, if I'm thinking, and that tells you a lot. And that along with the job that Dr. Bell's done, obviously Dr. Witt was the godfather. He laid the groundwork, and you put Dr. Witt and Coach Saban together in that recipe, and then Dr. Witt and everyone else took it and ran with it and didn't shy away. I'll say this, following Dr. Witt, I'm going to say, I don't know that anyone is correlating this, but following Dr. Witt's a lot like following Coach Saban. Yeah. And the person that followed Dr. Witt and got that done and got it done, Kalen DeBoer said, why not me? So I'm confident that this is going to work out, and I think that it's going to be great. And I think people that are true Alabama people should be excited, because I am. Yeah. I'm still excited about it for sure.
Well, what is there not to be excited about, right? Like
100.
we've got, and the stadium will continue to fill. And Corey, you're going to be one of the people that's going to help it continue to fill it.
That is like for a small part. Absolutely.
But you and I'll make plans to grab breakfast or lunch or something and just geek out on statistics. But for everybody else, we've reached the end of the road for the Crimson Chronicles podcast. And so, Corey, we're going to finish up this episode the way we do every single one, which is we're going to give the folks a big roll tide.
Sounds good. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.